Welcome back to the Becoming Mama podcast, where two long-lost best friends discuss all things motherhood. My name is Sam.
And I'm Emmy, and we're going to be talking with a very special guest today.
Yes, we are joined with Lauren Fortuna Flock today. Lauren is a mother and a former nurse turned holistic birth worker and somatic coach. Her mission is to revolutionize the way women prepare for birth and embrace motherhood. Lauren's unique approach blends the head and the heart, unifying the analytical and the creative, the mind and the body. Through her somatic healing techniques, she guides women back to their bodies to heal patterns, conditioning, and tap into intuition and instincts, and mother from a place of true authenticity, embodiment, power, and presence. She's also the host of the Well-Nourished Mother Podcast, where Lauren invites you to explore a world of candid, unfiltered conversations with badass, wise women. And together they explore the myriad of ways to nourish your body, mind, and heart, from preconception to postpartum and beyond. So, such a beautiful introduction. You're such a cool, interesting person. So we're so happy to have you. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you both.
So this is something that we connected on Instagram. Again, we have so many cool connections on Instagram, but we didn't even realize we had connected through a mutual friend, someone who is in my matrescence education course with me, is a dear friend of yours. But the way we kind of connected was Lauren told me what she did. And I was like, we talk all the time about getting quiet, tuning into yourself, but we never really know how to say how. That's outside of our skill set. So hearing what you do, it was just felt like such a natural fit. So excited to have you here. Is there anything else you want to add to that introduction?
Oh my. It's always so hard when you need to kind of like sum yourself up in this like short little paragraph. I think that covers the basics. I'm a former nurse turned birth worker and somatic coach, like you said. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and yeah, I'm excited to share more about somatics, the world of somatics.
That's awesome. So we already cued Lauren into our wins and losses. So we are going to start with those today. Do you want to go first, Lauren?
I can go first. I have just a funny story. It's quick, but it's kind of a win and a loss at the same time. So my husband and I took our daughter swimming the other day at this local pool, and we had a great time in the pool. And then we're getting out. It's like late afternoon. She's getting tired. And we're in the change room, and, him and I want to go in the family change room. She wants to sit on the bench. And, in a toddler's mind, this is like the biggest deal in the world. So she starts absolutely losing her mind. So that was fun. Took us like 25 minutes to get her changed, to get her calmed down. And then we go outside of the pool area in the reception area. And they have this like bookshelf where you can, leave and take books. And we told her at the beginning, we're not taking any books today. We have too many at home, whatever. Another really big expression of emotion. So, we're standing there like, okay, we need to leave now. This is not going well. Everyone's looking at us. It's one of those moments where you're starting to turn red, trying to stay calm. So I kind of looked at my husband and I'm like, the only way we're going to get out of here is I have to pick her up. I have to do the mom like scoop,
Yes.
So I pick her up. She's screaming and wailing. My husband takes the book. I start leaving. And I remember thinking the thoughts like, you know what, Lauren, you are doing a really good job right now. You are staying calm. You are not like freaking out as well. Like, good for you. I was giving myself a pat on the back. And then I take a few more steps and I suddenly out of nowhere roll my ankle. And it felt like it snapped off. Like it rolled so bad and the pain just went right up my leg. So she's still screaming and crying. I drop her on the ground. Now I'm screaming and crying. Like I am swearing like a sailor. Like I can only imagine if anybody saw this, it was quite the scene. And my poor husband kind of comes up behind us like, what just happened? He has no idea. He didn't see. So then it was just like everything was unleashed. All my, trying to co-regulate and stay calm was totally out the window. I was in pain. I was mad. It was just a really funny sight. I can imagine. So it was kind of a win and then turned into a loss.
It's so crazy how fast that can happen where you're like, yeah, we got this. I got this. And it's like, I don't got this. The ankle's pretty extreme though. Are you okay now?
Yes, luckily I have just very flexible like ligaments and I roll it all the time. But yes, it was fine like 2 days later.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny and so relatable because I feel like once they have one meltdown or once one thing kind of sets them off, it's like, oh God, like the thing with the book, you already knew, like we've already laid this foundation, but she's not going to care now because she's already up a level. And so it's like, it's gone from there. So good job for you for managing that emotion.
Kind of.
You did until life had other plans. But oh gosh, I mean, how about you? What's your win and loss this week?
Oh, okay. So, okay, I have a couple fun ones today, I think. So, I'll start with my loss. Twyla was really instrumental in making the decision that she wants to transition from Montessori to public school as a first grader. And I am really struggling with this because, one, I don't know if it's the best thing. And two, I find it really, really challenging to deal with the guilt and the feeling that you might be disappointing someone else, like emailing her principal, letting her guides know. Like that is actually one of the hardest things in my life, being able to manage that feeling of, oh, like I hate sending that email. It feels so bad. I never want to do it. Like it's the thing I want to run away from. But I think that applies to so many things that we have to do, like whether we are thinking about the things that we're feeding our children, the ways that we're taking them to the doctor, the kinds of medicine that we're feeding them. No matter what decision we make, there's always the opportunity to disappoint someone and make someone else happy, and it's so much to carry as a parent and as a mother who's the person who's primarily making those decisions. I just feel like it's a lot, and I think it's relatable, so I wanted to bring it up today because it's also one of those things that I just never hear people talk about, but it's part of our everyday life as moms.
Well, and it's not only that we're the ones making the decisions, but we are often the messenger of the decision. Like maybe this is something that dad really didn't want them to do, and it's like, oh well, no, I got to be the one to tell them, which shouldn't be the case, but it is just like how it is. So yeah, that's I don't hear people talk about that, but that is something I definitely experienced, and it has caused me to like not do some things that I wanted to do because I'm like, I just can't break the news, so I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. So I feel that.
Yeah, okay,
exactly.
And so then my positive is we got a trampoline for Christmas and we put it up yesterday, and it is super fun. Lauren, I don't think you should go on it with your ankle if you ever come over for a visit. But my husband set it up. He was up late into the night. It was dark out. He finished setting it up, and we all went outside. It was pitch black out, and we jumped on the trampoline. We had flashlights in our hands. It was so much fun, and I'm just so excited to see all of the joy and excitement and movement that this new thing brings to our family. So definitely a dream that I had as a kid that, seemed like so far off, but manifested it. It's here now.
That's so fun. Your summer is going to be so cool with being able to go out there and have like little sleepovers, or maybe not sleepovers, but snuggle parties on there too. And it's going to be so fun.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Okay, what about you, Sam?
My simple win is that I was going to, usually I keep Teddy home on Tuesdays because I like to have what we call mommy Teddy days. He loves to have mommy Teddy days. And we used to do 2 a week, but with everything with the journal day planner, we've been just doing 1 for the time being. And then in the summer, he'll come back for 2, because also normally in Minnesota, like we can't go outside. There's not a lot of fun things we can do. It's more fun for him to be at school often in the winter. So usually it's 2, but right now it's only 1. And I was going to send him to school because I just had so much to do. I have a lot on my plate. I'm very overwhelmed right now. And I was like, you know what? No, everything I am doing is to help moms embrace motherhood, to enjoy motherhood, to be present in motherhood. And what am I doing if I then get rid of my one sacred day with him to then do that work. It's like, no, that's not the way I'm doing this. It's not the way I want to do this. And I really was able to like go back to my values, not just have them be like this thing that I set and I talk about. Like, no, these are things that I value and I will honor. And I did. And I got up early and I worked through his nap and we had an awesome day. We had the most simple, wonderful day and he loved it. And he even said like, I want more mommy teddy days. And I was like, I do too. And so it was the right call. And I felt really proud of myself for making that decision. And then my loss this week is I'm very overwhelmed. I have a lot to do. And I still have a lot to do because I did that. But it was entirely worth it. And the things will get done. And I blocked off my entire calendar tomorrow. So nothing can come up and I can get back to that stuff. So yeah, it was a good day.
All right. Proud of you for
thank you.
Following your heart. Good job.
Thank you.
And simple days are the best.
Taught me.
Simple days with our kids. I think they're the best days. I don't know. What do you think, Lauren?
Yeah. And I can so relate to what you said, Sam. Just that juggle of, being a creative person and wanting to build a business and, work on a creative project while also, having a young child. And it's this constant kind of friction and battle between, setting time to do that and also longing to be with your child. And like you said, like the reason you're doing this is to support mothers to be present and be, and then to kind of disregard that in your own life. Like it's a constant kind of process of like checking in with yourself over and over again. Like, am I still kind of following my values, like you said? And it's one thing, I agree so much that it's one thing to just say that, time with my child is a value or connection is a value, but it's another thing to actually take the steps to embody that and live those values.
Thank you. So yes. And with the whole thought of following your heart, listening to your body, can we switch gears and start talking about what you do, Lauren?
Yeah. So where to begin?
Well, let's just start off. First of all, what is somatic work? Because that was something that came up in the introduction. What does somatics mean?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So the word somatics, literally means the body. It means being in communication or in dialogue with the body. So when we think of like a mind-body connection, we're focusing on the part that's in the body. So it's the felt experience. It's, I think another good way to kind of wrap your head around it is when we think of mindset work or even talk therapy, for example, that's a very top-down approach, meaning we go in through your brain. We talk about things and we analyze them and we come at them from this place of, thinking about the stories about them. With somatic work, it's a bottom-up approach, meaning we're going in from the body first. We're going in from the felt experience and learning to kind of reconnect to that, because I think so many of us are kind of walking around as these floating heads, just so completely disconnected from our bodies. And for some people, it's a very protective mechanism. There might be some past trauma that causes that to be the case and to feel more safe. But for a lot of us, it's just kind of like a learned behavior. We live in a culture that kind of overvalues the mind and overvalues the cognition and like being a very rational person is deemed as a plus. So learning to kind of reconnect to our bodies, getting in touch with our bodies, I think is just so important. And I think I'll share, the reason I got into this work is because, so first of all, I was a palliative hospice nurse for 10 plus years, loved my job, loved the interactive, interpersonal components of it. That was my favorite part, the intuitive components of it, knowing when to say something, when not, when to move closer, when to move away, that kind of thing. And I was one of those lucky people that got fired during the pandemic for not taking a certain vaccine. But that was a real kind of test of my own values and my own integrity and my own, all of that. So that was a huge thing, a huge kind of turning point in my life. So from there, I moved into birth work. I took a birth work course, mentorship, and it was in kind of entering the online birth space, like, so literally being on Instagram and as you start following new people, you kind of get into this silo, right? Like your Instagram page is biased towards what you're interacting with. So I ended up in this like strictly birth worker kind of world for a while. And I started noticing that so much of the conversation and so much of the messaging to pregnant women or mothers was like, you just need to voice your desires in birth to get the birth you want. You just need to set boundaries. You just need to, you know what I mean? And I noticed right away, like, okay, but what's the deeper level here? Why is that so difficult for so many women to do? And that's the level that got me interested in, like in that deeper level, like the why behind it. Why is that so hard for women? Why are we conditioned to be people pleasers? Why does it bring up so much discomfort in our bodies when we go to voice our desire and instead we shut down and not say anything? Why? Like that is what I'm so interested in. And I also noticed that, we approach kind of birth preparation from such a cognitive level. It's like, how can I learn about birth? But we don't birth with our brains. Our rational brains literally turn off. And we shift into our more like mammalian instinctual brain during birth and during labor. So we birth with our bodies, not with our heads. Yet all of the preparation is about getting in your head and learning more things instead of learning how to feel comfortable with discomfort in your body.
That's so beautiful.
Amen.
Yes.
I feel like that's what I talk about on the show every single week.
So you're speaking Emmy's language here, but so true. And I just want to say alongside that of like wanting to get out of your head and into your body, we just did a podcast last week on intrusive thoughts, and it brought up a lot for me of like the chronic intrusive thoughts that I have and the chronic stories I tell myself. And so like the idea of getting out of my head sounds entirely lovely. And it's something that I've done here and there, but it's something that has always just been pieces of my day of, maybe like a 5-minute meditation here or like 5 minutes of breathing when I really need it. But you're right. We live in such a world where it's like mind over matter, right? Like push through, like your mind will give up before your body does. Like you're taught to like ignore your body and to use your brain. And I don't think that's entirely helpful. Like as we're seeing, especially with like the amount of mental health struggles a lot of us have in this day and age. So I can really relate to that, like wanting to get out of your body or out of your head and getting into your body. I guess maybe an easier topic to jump into first versus why, if you would prefer, is so like, what does that look like? When you say get into your body, what does it mean to get into your body?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So one of the, like the place I like to start with anyone, and we can kind of do this little practice together right now even. So, so tuning into yourself and just naming, it's this practice of just naming sensations, because for some people, even that is really, really difficult. And it's this beautiful kind of first step of becoming more aware of what your body is communicating to you. And an easy place to start is just temperature. So for example, I can go first and I would say, I'm noticing that my palms are feeling really cool right now. And then Sam, you could go and name a sensation that you're noticing in your body right now.
Yeah. My palms feel kind of clammy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how about you, Emmy?
I noticed that my jaw is feeling like a little bit clenched because of my excitement that I have right now.
Yeah. And I love that you tied in like the emotion to the sensation. That would kind of be the next step, right? Is to further explore the sensation with openness and curiosity. So in my sessions, that's kind of where we start. I usually lead a little bit of a drop in, like some kind of meditative experience that helps you get out of your head and more into the present moment and into your body. And then from there, it's a process of kind of tuning in, taking notice, what's here today? Oh, it might be that, there's a little bit of a jitteriness in my chest. Okay. So then we can kind of dive a little bit deeper into that sensation. And the beautiful part is that when we give space for our body to talk to us, meaning when we just get quiet And we go at it with this, like, with no expectations, but we're open to the thoughts, the sensations, the memories, the perceptions that come through as we're doing this. And we take it all as communication. It's incredible what comes through. And I like to say that, like, I am just the guide in this process because it's all coming from you. I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm not making connections for you. I'm just the one kind of guiding the way and like asking the right questions. But it's incredible what comes through. So for example, I've had someone in a session, we started by going through this like tension in her back. And from focusing on that, we ended up connecting with this younger part of her using a little bit of inner child work and parts work. We ended up connecting with this younger part of her that was really scared of messing up. So she always had her guard up. And it's incredible what you can get to just by starting in the body, because our body holds on to our past experiences. It holds on to emotion. It's just such a fascinating process when we give space and time for the body to speak to us.
That's beautiful. It's funny when you asked, like to tune into the body and share what you're feeling. I did feel very vulnerable in that moment of like, ooh, I didn't want to disclose that, and I didn't want to feel it. And I will say I've done I really love ASMR, and your voice is like ear candy to me. I just have to say, you have the most beautiful, relaxing voice. So it's like, when you're like, I lead a meditative practice, I was like, girl, I would never wake up. But I love like ASMR guided meditations, but anytime it's like a body scan, I can't stand it. I can't stand a body scan of like, feel it in your feet and feel it up your leg and feel it makes me feel so uncomfortable. And I don't know what that is. So back to that question. Do you have any like why women in particular may have a hard time when it comes to connecting with our bodies?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. It's so hard to like be specific. And I think that's kind of a misunderstanding with this work too, or even like when we talk about intuition, for example, like, how to connect to intuition. It's kind of like this, it's coming at it from this rational place of like, well, I need a step-by-step. And when we're working in the body and we're working in this realm of emotions and feelings, there's not really a step-by-step. There's not really a perfect step-by-step for everyone, right? It's going to be so specific. And I think that's where there is so much value in actually being guided by somebody through this process, somebody that can like hold the space for you. And so that when that vulnerability comes up, you can feel safe. And I even want to apologize because I really shouldn't have asked you to do that without your permission first.
Oh God, no. That's not a problem at all.
Yeah, but really, like, it's something that, like you said, it can feel very vulnerable just to, like, I've had clients as well who, anytime I say like, okay, and what are you noticing in your body? It's like, I don't know, nothing. It's just off. And when we start to look at these things as protective mechanisms, so for example, that shutting that off and kind of dissociating from the body can be a protective mechanism. Potentially, there could have been something in your past, maybe, that showed you or taught you that it's better to not be connected to your body. It's safer. And now as an adult, as you're learning and realizing now, okay, this is a pattern I'm noticing, I'm ready to kind of move past it. There's simple, slow, titrated ways, meaning you take little sips at a time. I think so many people want to I want to heal myself and I want to heal myself right now. And it's like, if you're trying to show your nervous system safety, too much, too fast, too soon. That's what trauma is. Anything that's too much, too fast, too soon. And I think a lot of people almost kind of like re-traumatize themselves when they're trying to heal because they're trying to go too fast, too much, too soon, the other direction. So it's a very slow, gentle process of just letting your body become and feel okay with experiencing a new sensation.
I have so much to say, actually, related to this conversation. I think it's fun to, since you do birth work and those types of things, to kind of bring this conversation over to the birth realm. I have had an emergency C-section, a home birth, and a free birth. And with my first birth in the hospital, it was very much the feeling when those waves and contractions started of I realized I didn't want to feel anything in my body ever. I was a professional woman with an advanced degree, and my training had been to turn everything off. That's what I had gone to grad school for, and I realized it in that moment. And so everything was tight, everything was contracted within me, and there was no way I was probably going to release that baby on my own. And so part of that healing work and the somatic piece of that, I realize now in having this conversation with you that the place that I started when I was ready to heal from that first birth and forge the path to birthing at home with our second was I was absolutely terrified to the point where I could cry right now thinking about touching my C-section scar and just feeling what it felt like and holding all of the emotion that held within me. And so when you talk about, Samantha, that being a very uncomfortable and vulnerable sensation of learning how to feel what it feels like to live in your body, I totally agree with the aspect of starting small that you shared, Lauren. And I'll share one thing that I do with the kids now, because this is something that I want them to live their whole life doing is being able to listen and being able to feel. And so one thing we always do when we're out and about, we're out at the park, and some of our listeners are probably going to hear this and be like, Emmy is nuts. I have them put their hands up to trees and I say, what do you hear? I want you to listen to that tree and I want you to tell me what message it has for you. Because I know intuitively, if they can listen to a tree or if they can listen to plant life and they can connect with that intuition, connect with that voice inside themselves, they intuitively are going to be able to connect with themselves on a very deep level and feel what they need to feel within their own body. So I think there's just so much we can do in terms of starting really, really small and learning how to feel all of the sensations that that you're required to feel as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful, Emmy. And like, that's truly what this is all about. It's about like learning to increase your capacity to feel it all, the good, the bad, the uncomfortable, the joy, all of it. We're increasing our, window of tolerance would be the technical term. But it's kind of like our nervous system's capacity. For some people, it's tiny, and anything too activating, like right away, they're getting dysregulated. And for other people, it takes a whole lot more stress and discomfort for them to really feel either more like downregulated or activated. The other thing I wanted to mention was, I loved what you shared, Emmy, about your scar. And it's so true. Like our bodies and that scar, it holds so much emotion. And it's also a protective way when we kind of suppress. We each have our own patterns of this, right? It's either, when a big thing happens, when a big emotion comes up, what's your pattern? Is it avoidance? Is it suppression? Is it diving headfirst into it and wanting to know so much about it? Like each one of us has our own. And my own birth experience, I realized as well that I am an avoider. Same thing. Any sensation, I wanted it to stop. I wanted it over. I wanted to just skip ahead to the next. There was no sitting with it. There was no capacity to do that. So yeah, we birth how we live, right? So if you live from this place of avoiding big emotions or suppressing, you're going to birth the same way too. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of and to get curious about. And all of this, like this whole conversation it is all meant to be like, it's meant to look inward from a place of compassion and curiosity. It's never to judge. It's never to judge ourselves. It's from this place of, I want to understand myself better. I'm ready to kind of look at myself and kind of extract the wisdom here and learn how to maybe make a behavior change. Because for a lot of people, that's what it comes down to. It's like, I noticed that I really procrastinate all the time, and I want to get to the bottom of why that is. And we can kind of go in and through the body to figure out why that is and to heal these like old stories and beliefs that are kind of keeping us stuck in that pattern.
Yeah, one thing in the work that I do, I do birth story listening sessions, and that's primarily the main reason that we're there together, because people in those situations are ready to start talking about and working through and healing from the birth trauma that they experienced. And so it's a very guided process, and it's partially scripted, but the overall point of it is to make that mind-body connection, feel where that story is sitting in our body so that we can work on, first of all, just connecting with it, figuring out where it's at, and then getting to the point where we're ready to make peace with it, find acceptance, release it if that's what feels good to you. And so much of that work is somatic. And so I would love to hear, Lauren, what your tips and thoughts are when we do recognize that there is trauma or discomfort or something sitting in our body, and how we can start working through that. So naming was your first suggestion, which I love that suggestion. I think it's a great place to start. What would be the next step?
Yeah, I mean, truly, I think finding someone to work with, especially, and I mean, you named trauma. So especially if you feel like there is some capital T trauma, or, little t trauma, anything that's feeling really big and scary. And, even at the thought of it, you can feel yourself getting a little bit activated. If there's any kind of like bodily response to what you're thinking about, I would say it's definitely a good idea to work with someone through this, someone that can guide you in this process, for sure. I think, yeah, it's like I said, it's so individual and so, yeah, but, I can think of some other like really tiny ways to just start reconnecting to the body in general. So for example, one funny little tool you can try is just putting a Band-Aid on your toe. Putting a Band-Aid on your toe and walking around for the day. And throughout the day, you're just kind of taking notice of when you notice it. It's like, okay, I feel something on my toe. And it seems so silly and kind of, insignificant, but it really is a process of reconnecting that body and that mind together. Another one is like paying attention to the way your body tells you it needs something. For example, when you have the urge to pee, do you ignore that urge, or do you notice it right away and do something about it? So just setting that intention and going through the day with that as the goal is like, okay, I'm going to like follow my body's cues today. Just when it comes to hunger, thirst, and going to the washroom, because those are very universal feelings. We can all kind of connect to those feelings. So it's kind of an easy place to start. It's something that's very kind of accessible for most people. Those are some really, they seem so silly and tiny in a way, but they can be such a huge way to start reconnecting to the body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really interesting. And I mean, you've even talked about this before, about how wasn't that, you said that one time you're like, I realized I wasn't going to the bathroom when I needed to, because you just were like, so I have so much to do. And right. Wasn't that you, right?
Yeah, that was in an episode that we never released. And I shared that example about going to the bathroom. And then I also shared the example of one time I was sitting with another woman. We were having a conversation, a little play date. And she looked at me and she said, I've decided that if someone offers me a drink of water and I'm thirsty, I say yes. And to me, that was so profound. And I tell people that story all the time because that's something that, I don't know, I've done it a million times. I've sat down in the hairdresser's seat and she's been like, do you want a bottle of water? And I'm like, no, because I don't want to inconvenience her to walk the extra 3 steps there and 3 steps back to grab that bottle of water, because I'm not worthy of that extra time that it's going to take her. I'm already there to be served by her, and that's too much already. And so I think that's a really good practice we can get into, of honoring our cues, like you said. And I would also love, Lauren, for you to share a little bit about how you work with women or people in pregnancy who are doing this work, who are learning to feel the sensations in order to feel ready for birth, because that's also a conversation that comes up all the time. People are always curious of how I was able to birth without pain medication or an epidural or anything like that. And so I would love to hear what a session is like with you, or what a conversation is like with you, someone that wants to work with you. What would it be like?
Yeah. So before I get into that, there just something kind of came up for me while you were speaking there, Emmy. It's this idea of observation versus identification. So if we can learn or start with just by taking notice of what's happening in our body instead of identifying with it. So it's the difference between, I'm anxious or I am feeling some buzzy energy in my chest. Do you see the difference there? One is you're very identified with the sensation and the emotion, and it's like it consumes you. Whereas when we learn to kind of separate ourselves a little bit from the experience and connect with this witness. So I don't know if you guys experience this, but I can notice when there's like this other part of me kind of watching over what's happening. And I call it my witness, right? It's this other level that's not so tied up in everything. It's kind of looking over and seeing. And it's from this place that you can kind of start to detach yourself from the experiences that are happening. And I think it's really easy to get kind of consumed by our emotions and think that, if I'm feeling angry right now, then I am an angry person. And for a lot of my clients, this simple little switch, this little kind of mindset shift and playing with this idea of observation versus identification helps just detach just a little bit and helps everything feel not so big, not so much like it's consuming you. So I just wanted to share that little piece just because I've had so many clients say oh my gosh, that is such a great shift. The clients that I've worked with that are pregnant, for example, it's kind of been a very similar process. I wouldn't say that I even specifically focus on birth because like I said, it's more about connecting with the body and less about learning about birth and trying to manage specific aspects of birth. It's, for example, I had a client who, we went through that, my typical kind of session process where we do a little drop in, we connect in with the body, and she was feeling a really tight band around her belly. And from there, we kind of got into all of this interesting stuff around fear, so it's a very embodied practice of, again, we're not just talking about these things. Where in session, it's 80% in the body probably and about 20% in the mind because the mind tells us where to go. We still need the mind, but it's such a felt experience. I actually have a hard time kind of describing it. And I know that's something I need to get better at. I need to be able to describe it, but it's because it's such a felt experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to hear about how you, from a C-section to a home birth to a free birth, what were you've already mentioned that you kind of had to go through this process of tuning into your body. I'd love to hear what worked for you.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I would say, I think I just love what you're saying about, I love the examples that you're giving from your sessions of the low back pain or the band around the belly. So often in the sessions that I conduct, it's a heaviness on the chest. And that's very much what I experienced after my C-section, was just a complete weight of feeling the entire world had just crashed down on me and now I could barely breathe type of scenario. And so I think just in terms of helping communicate with people about where to start with this work, I think that it's just so hard to even know where those sensations are unless you actually sit down with someone, whether it's virtually or in person, and connect and get quiet and just create space to feel. We barely ever do that in our culture and in our day-to-day life. And there's just such value in that. And I feel like I touch on that all the time on this podcast. But in terms of my journey, and I've shared this a million times, so I won't get into it too much, but truly, so growing up, I'll give you a little bit of background, Lauren. Grew up in a family where, there is a pain medication for everything. If you have a headache, it's okay if you don't feel it. If you have period cramps, the Midol is the right decision. You dull that sensation. You don't have to feel it if you don't want to. And so a lot of my journey beyond just, feeling my C-section scar and those types of things, we're learning to cope with, identify, sit with discomfort in my body because that was really, really hard for me. That was a mindset shift I needed to make. It was a body shift I needed to make. But as time went on and I learned more about the connection between pain and fear, and realizing that the more I paid attention to that sensation, the more power I gave it over me. the less I paid attention to those sensations, the less power it had over me, the more I was able to adapt to feeling really big things and being able to, roll with it and make it through it and trust myself to know that I could. And so towards the end of both my pregnancies, I did a lot of spinning babies yoga. And so right there, that in and of itself requires you to be uncomfortable even at the end of pregnancy. So again, a great opportunity to sort of just sit with those sensations, feel uncomfortable, and know that, if you can get through it for 30 minutes for this yoga routine, then you can probably get through it for 12 hours when the hormone fluctuations come in and your body's supporting you through that birth process, because there's a whole lot of magic at work when we're actually giving birth. There's a lot of ways that our body supports us in being able to sit with that discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like when we detach the story from the sensations, that it gets a whole lot easier to just feel through them, right? So often we attach a story to it, like if my palms are feeling sweaty right now and I'm feeling a little buzzy in my chest, it means I'm anxious. And then you go off and you tell yourself this whole story about why that's bad, why you suck, or, whatever the narration is in your head. But when we can kind of just see it for what it is, it gets so much easier. And that in itself is a process of learning how to do that, right? And it's such a slow and titrated, tiny little sips, like I said, of getting, like, all of this it's patterned, right? Like you have these deep grooves in your brain that you're following each time. So to make a new pattern, it's slow and it's steady, and it requires self-compassion and slowness, and that can feel uncomfortable in itself for a lot of people.
Yeah, I can feel, and I love that. Like, it's the judgment of the everything that is always the problem. We have a guest coming on in a few weeks. I'm excited for you guys to hear. Her name's Dr. Carolyn Dickens, and she's a postpartum psychologist, and she talks about that a lot, about how maybe it's not your experience that's the problem, it's your judgment of it, and giving yourself that grace to just remove the judgment and see what you see there. I think that's a lot about those body sensations as well, and especially with pain, as you're talking about, Emmy. It's like, rather than judging it as something that needs to go away, or that you're bad for feeling it, or that it is bad, letting it be what it is. And I wonder if that's our parents' generations, because there's a problem in life, there is a solution you can buy or you can take. Like, there's no need for you to be in pain and discomfort at anything. And I think our generation is kind of wheeling that back, being like, yeah, I have a headache. No, I'm not going to take anything for it, because I know it's not forever. And I know that this is a level of pain I can live with without putting something into my body. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
I would wonder if media has made a huge difference in that. Like, our parents' generation and our grandparents were the first people to have mass media telling them there's a pill to solve that problem and you don't have to feel it. And so that programming sort of like got in their brain, and there was a solution all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's certainly a cultural phenomenon, really, to kind of ignore our sensations. And there's a pill for every ill. And I think at the beginning you kind of asked, like, well, why are women? And this is it, right? It's media. It's, I have period cramps. That's bad. I need to take something to get rid of it, instead of getting curious about the communication that's coming through from those cramps. Like, what is your body trying to tell you? Our cramps, are they common? Sure. Are they normal? Not necessarily, but we're just so quick to kind of slap a Band-Aid on it and ignore it, so that we can hustle and get on with our lives, instead of, seeing it as a sign that, okay, you're bleeding, you need to rest today. And it's when we can kind of start to make those shifts, and it's hard when we live in a patriarchal world that is all, that really loves the hustle culture. It's tough.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Any other questions you have, Emmy? Anything else you want to touch on?
Oh, we're getting so long here. There's so much I still want to talk about.
Actually, I was going to say, I'm going to pitch you, Emmy. Lauren has a podcast as well. And I think Emmy has such a incredible experience of the things she has overcome with her birth stories. I think she would be a wonderful
guest. Thank you. So kind.
Wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I could talk about this forever. I could turn this into a mini somatic therapy session for myself as well, because I'm like, oh my God, this is all making sense. There's so much making sense here. And my head out of it now. I'm like, don't think about it too much. Oh, but this has been so wonderful. Before we leave, can you tell everybody where they can find you, your services, your content, all of that stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram mainly right now at Nest and Nourish. And yeah, I'm offering one-to-one somatic coaching sessions. I've got some packages available, so just send me a message. And yeah, if any of your listeners just mention this episode, they can get 25% off a single session price.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to let that be known, and we'll link you and all of your information down in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for being here today. I think this is a really powerful podcast that I hope allows all of you to step out of your heads a little bit and into your bodies today. And for all of you listening, thank you so much for being here. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, you have feedback for the podcast, our email is down below in the show notes as well. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, please make sure to give us a 5-star rating, review, and make sure to subscribe so that you get all future episodes. And if you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all those things. Any engagement helps us out a ton.
If you want to find us, be sure to connect with us on Instagram. All of our information is down below in the description. See you next week.